Welcome to the Proceedings Podcast. I'm Bill Hamblet, the Editor-in-Chief of Proceedings at the U.S. Naval Institute. Today is Friday, 27 June 2025, and what a week it has been. Today's episode is brought to you by Booz Allen. Booz Allen delivers outcomes with speed for the nation's most critical defense priorities. Work with solution engineers who use AI, cyber, and quantum to help warfighters collaborate faster with allies and partners from the open seas to the edge of space. Learn more at boozallen.com/defense. Well, as I said, it's been a heck of a news week, and as always, our USNI news team has been busy covering all the bases. So my guest today is Sam LaGrone, the head of the news team, here to talk about some of the headline stories from this week. Sam, welcome back to the show, and thanks for taking a break from your sprint.
Sure. Hey, happy to be here.
All right. So before we get into a couple of questions, I want to make a plug for the USNI News C-Scroll newsletter. So that's something you guys are thinking week 73. So you started about a year and a half ago.
I think we're at 76. Or
76?
I'm working on I'm going on vacation next week, so I'm working on kind of pre-writing 76. So yeah.
Okay, got it. So anyway, about a year and a half ago, you started offering this USNI News C-Scroll member-only newsletter. So most of the USNI News products and news stories are free to the public. It is a public service that we provide, that the Naval Institute provides. But once a week, you and your fellow reporters dig deeper into your reporters' notebooks, and you put together a newsletter that is just for members of the Naval Institute. So if for those of you who are listening, if you love USNI News and you want to get a little bit more, become a member of the Naval Institute. And when you sign up, you'll start getting the C-Scroll newsletter. It'll pop into your inbox about 7 a.m., 7:30 every Thursday morning. So, and it's great stuff, great value added.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. So first topic in this very busy weekly news roundup, if you will, is the president's budget. The Pentagon budget for 2026 dropped on Wednesday. So what are some of the highlights for the Navy and the Marine Corps?
Sure. So this is not a normal budget. So typically by statute, the budget should drop on the first Monday in February. As you can tell, we are very much into late June. So this first year budgets in new administrations are always usually late, and they're always usually pretty unsatisfying because they don't come with the big 5-year defense plan that people have come to expect. So industry and people who pay attention to defense budgets for predicting how policy will evolve from what the administration decides to vote with their dollars on. This one is probably the strangest one that I've ever seen in the last 15, 16 years, because it's tied to this ongoing big beautiful bill, if you've heard about.
Yep.
In the news. It's the reconciliation bill. So reconciliation is a special type of legislation that the Senate and the House can pretty easily and quickly put together, and you can put all sorts of stuff in it. It doesn't need all of the same votes and checks and balances that an ordinary piece of legislation would. So as part of that, there's a $150 billion defense supplemental that was intended by the people who wrote the bill to sort of be feathered in throughout the Pentagon budget over 4 years or so. This year, the Office of Management and Budget has taken that money and decided, hey, this is now part of the Pentagon's base budget, which is something that Republicans in the House and the Senate think is not their intent. So the budget rollout this week, there was kind of some fighting back and forth about how much money is actually going to be in the budget, right? So the White House and Secretary Hegseth and OMB are saying, hey, this is the $1 trillion budget. We're doing all this great stuff. We have 2 bills, but 1 budget. While Congress,
$1 trillion defense.
Trillion plus. That's what the $150 billion supplemental. While Congress, and this is most of this is happening on the Republican side. So the split is between Congress and OMB as to how to count the money. And so Congress is saying, actually, no, this is a flat budget. This is a Biden era budget because you're adding in the supplemental, which is all preamble to say, what does it mean for what came out this week? So the budget that came out this week, going back to the idea that 2 bills, 1 budget, relies a lot on using this reconciliation money to go and make up for some of the stuff in the shipbuilding budget, right? So the shipbuilding budget in the base budget is about $20 billion-ish, which will buy you 1 Columbia-class submarine, 1 Virginia-class submarine, and then a Tagos surveillance ship that's being built by Austal. So it's an ocean-going surveillance ship. It's replacing a real old class. They use it for ocean bottom surveillance and all sorts of stuff. And then they feed all that stuff to the submariners in ways that I don't understand. And that's what's in the base budget. But the Pentagon is claiming 19 ships total, not adding 16 ships from reconciliation that's in there, including 2 destroyers, another Virginia-class submarine, 9 medium landing ships that are based on an Israeli landing ship, which is based on the old Army LSV watercraft, the Frank Besson class. And then notably, and what we reported yesterday, is that it doesn't look good for the frigate program. There's no money for the frigates, for the Constellation frigates. If we all remember that program has been pretty fraught lately. So you were supposed to come up with a base design based on the Italian FREM, which is a multi-mission. It's a 4,000-ton multi-mission frigate. However, the Navy sort of insisted on a lot of modifications to the design. So you don't have a common hull with the Italian FREM. You have something that's only about 15% or so alike with the original design. And that's mostly in the propulsion system. Again, that program having a hard time being manufactured in Wisconsin. That yard, Fincantieri Marinette Marine, has had problems with workforce retention. They have problems with the design. So that's not looking great. The other thing that is probably stalled right now is the FAXX fighter program.
Yep. It's not. Is that considered NJAD for the Navy, or is it?
They've changed it. Initially it was both the Air Force and the Navy had the same acronym, NGAD, Next Generation Air Dominance.
Yep.
And then one had the soft G and one had the hard G. But I think they went and they dialed that back to FAXX, which is what the designator was in like 2006, 2007. So we're back to the future on that one. But
that's intended to take the place of the F/A-18 Super Hornets when they age out, right?
That's correct. So that's where kind of the capacity issue is what they're seeing. And so ultimately the biggest justification for those airframes, that next generation one, is to make the carrier air wing sort of viable in the 21st century. So you're seeing a real reduction in the combat radius of an aircraft carrier, mostly due to the airframes on board, right? So let's not forget the Super Hornet is kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yep.
That was after the, what was it, A-12? The Navy had a specific strike platform bomber that they were messing around with, and they ended up canceling the program and instead went with the Super Hornet. Kind of you take the Hornet, you make it bigger engines, and make it more capable. But those airframes, essentially based on a late 70s design, those airframes are kind of pushing the limit of what they're capable of doing sort of in modern warfare. And then you also have a combat radius issue. So if you think about it, you had 1,000 miles plus with an F-14 with a Phoenix on it back in the day. Now it's much shorter than that. And so it speaks to the relevance of the carrier in the 21st century, especially in a Western Pacific context, when you have a pretty aggressive PLA rocket force that's going to try and box you out of the first or second island chain.
So there's money in the budget for FAX.
No, there's not necessarily.
There's not.
There's $75 million. So that development looks like it's going to get stalled.
Got it.
More good news. And then on the personnel side, the Navy's looking to add about another 6,000 people. But essentially, what's happening right now is you have this budget, and like with a lot of placeholder, it's a placeholder considering what a lot of first year administration. So this isn't unique to the Trump administration. A lot of first year administrations. This is going back. Obama, Trump 1, and then Biden all sort of were still kind of feeling out what their national security imperatives were. So right now, what's unique about this budget is the fact that so much of it is dependent on this one big beautiful bill and this reconciliation bill. And so there's a lot of kind of gamesmanship back and forth between Congress and the Office of Management and Budget.
Got it.
Sorry, that was all over the place, but it is diffusing a bomb. It is very complicated.
And it's very complicated. And no money for whatever the next aircraft carrier will be in this.
There is some advanced procurement for CVN 82, which is currently, I think, named the George Bush.
We're going to have George.
No, I'm
Bush,
sorry. George W. Bush is CVN 82,
and Bill Clinton at some point, right? Would be
is
like
CVN 83, and so that's a whole. No, I'm sorry. CVN 82 is Bill Clinton, and then CVN 83 is George Bush. George W. Bush. H.W. Bush is CVN 77.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. All right. So the other big story maybe the biggest story of the week was Operation Midnight Hammer. So it's been about 5 days since the Air Force B-2s, 7 of them dropped 14 GBU-57 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrators on the Iranian nuclear program. What role did the Navy play in the strike?
So that's an interesting question. So we really keyed on this when General Dan Kane was briefing reporters on Sunday. We really keyed on this blocking force that they had talked about that kind of went in for the B-2s ahead of time that were supposed to do a suppression of enemy air defense mission, right? So you go and you have specialized aircraft go and find potential surface-to-air missile sites and blow them up with all sorts of manners of radiation-seeking missiles and all sorts of stuff you can do. Throw jammers out there and stuff like that.
Them, right? Yep.
So we could not confirm that they were Navy aircraft involved. It sounds like they were all Air Force, but we're not 100% sure. And we did try to figure it out, but we were left with the understanding after talking to a lot of people that there weren't Navy aircraft involved, which was interesting for us because similar B-2 strikes, not similar for underground bunkers, but B-2 strikes in Libya in 2011, those needed EA-18G Growlers to come in and take care of the air defenses before the B-2s could make their runs. And we thought there was something similar. So they used different aircrafts. We're thinking F-35s, but we're not sure. But the Navy did have a major role because there was a guided missile there was a guided missile nuclear submarine there, like in Ohio, one of the Ohio class guided missile submarines. And they fired about 30 Tomahawks to the non-underground site there where the Iranians have a lot of their atomic research. And that happened in coordination with the larger strike. So you had your 2 flights of B-2s drop their 14 MOPS, right, your massive ordnance penetrator, and then you had the additional 30 TLAM strike the non-underground site. And those came from, we believe, USS Georgia, which has been operating in the area for since September. So the SSGNs, as we all know, there's 4 of them in the inventory. So they're the first 4 Ohios. And so after SALT II in the 90s, they were like, well, we need to do some arms reductions. Why don't we take these 4 submarines with all this capacity and go and swap out the ballistic missiles with Tomahawks. So each tube that used to carry a Trident D5 now has 7 Tomahawks kind of
Yep.
arranged as sort of like a little revolver thing. So if you like imagine like an old Smith and Wesson, that's kind of how they're arranged in there. And so you're kind of plugged into those those bigger tubes have those kind of inserts in there. And then 2 tubes are left over for special operations stuff. So those big Ohios can take up to 60 plus special operators for 90 days, and they just park in places. And so they were developed kind of in the era of counterinsurgency, that
Yeah.
like, hey, I can go and without you hearing about it, go and put a platform off your coast with 60 SEALs or Green Berets or whoever you want to put in there, plus the capacity to fire 154 Tomahawks. And that was a pretty wild capability that sort of the U.S. kind of lucked into by taking those first 4. So those guided missile submarines are just workhorses. So they had the blue gold swapping arrangement.
Yep.
So they have 2 crews, 1 platform. So after I have seen different numbers on the periodicity for how often they swap, but they keep the platform out there for a long time. So as evidence, last year, is it either in 23 or 24, USS Florida came back from a EUCOM CENTCOM patrol, and it was gone for 727 days.
2-year deployment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just
Yeah.
kept swapping the crews out.
Yeah. So and they're doing the same thing with Georgia right now. And so Georgia was having that capability and having that just massive submarine firepower that you could just kind of park anywhere was a big part of that mission.
Yeah, and those boats are getting to be 40 years old because they were commissioned in the early mid 80s.
Yeah, they're coming out of inventory soon. I think so there's 4 of them. It's Florida, Michigan, Ohio, and I'm blanking on the last one.
Georgia.
But Georgia. Yeah, there you are. And 2 of them are coming out next year, unless they're going to get an extension. And then I think the whole class should be out of circulation by 28. And so the Virginia payload module, which is taking a Virginia class and putting an extension on there with 4 similar size tubes, is going to add 40 Tomahawks. And so they're going to be able to do that. So that program, of course, is delayed. It is a shipbuilding program in 2025, therefore it is delayed. So those aren't going to come in line. So there's going to be sort of this strike gap, which is to say that the existing Los Angeles class and Virginia class also can field Tomahawks, but just not in that massive quantity. So those are coming to replace that capability, and that both with the TLAMs and the SOF, but it's not going to be for a while, and there's going to be a little bit of a gap.
Got it. And those ships, when they're deployed, when those SSGNs are deployed, they are not reflected in the USNI News Fleet Tracker, which is very popular this week. A lot of people are checking out. A lot of people checking out your Fleet Tracker.
Yeah, no, that was the Fleet Tracker is always pretty popular, but like, you know, whenever there's a crisis, people go and click on it. If they are included, I think they're included in the deployment totals, and they're signaling when they pop up, they're signaling that, you know, when Georgia entered the AOR in CENTCOM, they were very clear. It was like, hey, it's right here. By the way, so there's some strategic messaging that come along with those platforms.
Gotcha. Talk a little bit about where the carrier strike groups are that are on deployment right now. Who's coming and going in each of the numbered fleets, and a little bit about ballistic missile defense ships as well.
Okay, happy to do that. On Tuesday, I was down in Naval Station Norfolk to see Gerald Ford depart. It is the second deployment for the world's largest / most expensive warship. And so they are on the way to Europe, but where in Europe, we're not 100% sure. Because the last time they deployed, they took a tour up to the high north, and they went up to Norway, did support calls. But that was pre the situation in the Middle East. That was pre October 7th, Hamas attack in southern Israel. So again, I suspect that they're either going to the Eastern Med or they'll linger a little bit more in the Atlantic. So that's the East Coast. So moving kind of further west, you have the Nimitz and the Vincent, which are currently in the North Arabian Sea right now, so Gulf of Oman area. And so Vincent has been there for a few months, and it has been covering down. So typically, if you have like an Iranian threat, you park an aircraft carrier in that region for a lot of different reasons, but primarily because of the autonomy of being able to launch operations there. So you don't have the same level of political risk if you start flying out of the U.S. base in Al Udeid over Iran, because the Qataris at that point have a vote. Right. So that's one of the nice things that the COCOMs like, is to have a aircraft carrier that they could do something with.
4.5 acres of sovereign U.S. territory.
Right, exactly. And then you have the USS Nimitz, which is on its final deployment right now, and so they just entered the region in Saturday or Sunday, and they're going to go and they're going to relieve Vincent. So a lot of what happens with the carriers is going to be contingent upon how long the ceasefire holds, how long the Houthis in Yemen decide not to attack ships, and then the ongoing situation with Israel and Hamas. On top of that, we've seen a big surge of ballistic missile defense destroyers into the Mediterranean in particular. So you have 2 destroyers that are forward deployed to Rota that are in the Med right now, and then you also have 3 other East Coast ships that are also there. And so each one of those ships has a big air search defense radar, and they're plumbed for standard missile 3s, which can intercept. They're ballistic missile interceptors. So they're essentially a 2-stage rocket that can fire from a destroyer to go after ballistic missiles. And so the ones in Rota were specifically designed to go after rogue missiles that are fired from Iran towards Europe. That was part of the European phase adaptive approach. In addition, there's 2 other sites, ground-based sites, which are based on destroyer technology in Poland and Romania. So they're all part of that combination, but they've been surged to go and help protect Israel if needed, in addition to a U.S. Army terminal high altitude something, it's THAAD.
Area defense, yeah.
Thank you. Terminal high altitude area defense DND system, which is also Israel.
Yep. And I've heard some news that a couple of those destroyers did fire at Iranian ballistic missiles that were shot at Israel in the latest tit for tat between Israel and Iran.
It would not surprise me. The SM-3 had its first first combat employment last year, I think. So it's a system that's been under development for the last 20 years, but for the first time it was used in a combat situation. So it would not surprise me at all.
Gotcha. So last topic, real quick, just we've got some Navy leadership changes coming. New CNO's been nominated. Who's that? And what are some other?
Yeah, sure. So after several months, the Daryl Cottle, who's the current commander of U.S. Fleet Forces, was nominated to be the next Chief of Naval Operations. Was it last week? It might have been last week. In addition to a couple of other 3-star nominations, right? So we haven't seen a lot of flag nominations, flag and general officer nominations. So there's still some pretty big open gaps right now, but we have a new.
While you look that up, I'll just note that the Naval Institute, our multi-time author, Vice Admiral Fred Kacher, also a former member of our editorial board. He's been the 7th Fleet Commander for about 2 years now, and he's renominated for a 3-star position or a 3-star position to go to be the Director of the Joint Staff, which is always a generally an upwardly mobile position, right? So Fred will leave 7th Fleet out in Japan and come to the Pentagon this summer after he gets his confirmation. And now go ahead. Who are some of the other
sure.
fleet commanders moving around?
So Admiral Kacher is going to be all pending confirmation from the Senate, but Admiral Kacher is going to be relieved by Rear Admiral Michael Donnelly, who's the current Director for Air Warfare on the Chief of Naval Operations Staff. That's the requirements officer for air platforms. And that's he was a naval aviator. And then let's see here. The current CENTCOM Director of Operations, Rear Admiral Kurt Renshaw, is going to be nominated to lead 5th Fleet. And then, Seiko Wakano, who is the current commander at NAV. I think it's Naval Information Warfare now. Naval Information Warfare Command now. They changed the name a couple of years ago, and I always kind of blank on that. But she's the current commander, and she's going to be moving to be the principal military deputy for the Navy Secretary in charge of research, development, and acquisition. So that's the chief weapons buyer for the Navy.
Yep.
And then let's see here. And then Rear Admiral Thomas Hendershett is going to be moving to be the big J2 in
the Joint Staff.
In the Joint Staff, and he's a big he's an old China hand, and he's been around Taiwan and China for quite a bit.
Also a proceedings author, and he served as the naval attaché and then the defense attaché in Beijing. I think he's lived in Beijing for something like 8 years of his career. And then he was the Indo-PACOM J2 until last year. And now he's nominated to be the big Joint Staff J2. Perfect guy. If the focus is going to be on the Indo-Pacific and China, Admiral Hendershett he's the right guy for that job.
And then one other nominee that kind of came through this week was there is a Department of the Navy JAG, new Navy JAG, who is a Marine. So Major General David Bly has been nominated to be the next Navy JAG, which is ordinarily a 3-star naval lawyer, Navy lawyer, but this time it will be a 2-star Marine lawyer, because there's the whether or not your top JAG should be a 2 or 3-star. It's kind of bounced back and forth. So in 2017. Congress said it doesn't have to be a 3-star, and then since then the Navy has found ways to make it a 3-star position. But now it looks like it's just going to be a 2-star position. It's going to be a Marine who, based on the lawyers we talked to, has an excellent reputation. So this is not the first time a Marine has been the top Navy lawyer. And I'm looking at my notes here, so bear with me. In 1878. Colonel William Butler Rennie was the first Navy JAG, and he was a Marine lawyer.
He was the first Navy JAG, and he was a Marine lawyer.
The first Navy JAG was a Marine.
Wow! All right, that's a great bit of Jeopardy quiz notes there. All right, well, Sam, let's wrap up. But before we go, any saved rounds or teasers about upcoming stories? What are you guys working on now?
Well, we've got a couple of things coming, for all your readers out there, or all your viewers out there. We're working on a project on Nimitz's final deployment, and we're looking for anyone who is out who's a plank holder who was out on the first deployment. And then we are working on a couple of other stories about amphibious readiness. That's a big deal. We've got kind of a piece that we're working on, the operational history of the littoral combat ship. It is everybody loves to hate it, but there's some people who actually think they're kind of cool. And then the ongoing budget stuff will be ongoing. So now the Congress has the budget, they have 3 months to pass it, and 1 month they are in recess. So there you
go. I would not bet my mortgage on getting the budget passed before 1 October. So could be Yeah.
Who's to say?
Who's to say? One can hope. One can hope that we won't be in a continuing resolution later this fall. All right. Well, my guest today has been Sam LaGrone. He's the head of the USNI news team. He's been recapping a very busy naval news week. Sam, thanks for your time and your insights today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, this episode was brought to you by Booz Allen, delivering outcomes with speed for the nation's most critical defense priorities. Work with solution engineers who use AI, cyber, and quantum to help warfighters collaborate faster with allies and partners from the open seas to the edge of space. Learn more at boozallen.com/defense. And until next episode, remember, go to usni.org/join, become a member, and start receiving that USNI News C-Scroll newsletter. We'll catch you next week.